We're terminating your employment. You are nothing but a liability.
Daddy, why are you crying?
The question didn't sound like a question. It sounded like confusion trying to understand something it had never seen before. Marcus Hill stood frozen in the living room, the Christmas tree still glowing behind him. Red and gold lights blinked softly, reflecting off ornaments his kids had picked themselves from the dollar store weeks earlier. A paper angel leaned crooked at the top. Wrapping paper covered the floor. One present remained unopened. His phone was still in his hand. The call had ended 10 seconds ago. He hadn't moved since. His daughter Ava stood in front of him, clutching a small stuffed bear, her pajama sleeves too long for her arms. Her eyes were wide, searching his face. His son Noah sat cross-legged near the tree, watching quietly, his excitement from earlier drained into something cautious and unfamiliar. Marcus swallowed hard. He hadn't planned for this moment. Not today. Not on a Christmas morning.
I'm okay.
He said finally, forcing the words out.
Daddy's just tired.
And his kids knew it. Because fathers weren't supposed to cry in front of Christmas trees. Especially not 10 minutes before they were supposed to open presents. Marcus turned away from them quickly, pressing his palm against his face, trying to steady his breathing. His chest felt tight, like something heavy had settled there and refused to move. Behind him, the tree lights kept blinking. Earlier that morning, his alarm had gone off at 4:30 a.m. He remembered staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet of the house, knowing he should have been home. Knowing he should have been in pajamas with his kids, waiting for them to wake him up by jumping on the bed. Instead, he had pulled on his work boots. Because his boss had called him the night before. "I need you in tomorrow," the voice had said. "It's an emergency shift." Marcus had hesitated. "It's Christmas," he'd said carefully. There was a pause on the line. "You want overtime or not?" Marcus had looked at the small pile of gifts on the dining table. The cheap wrapping. The store-brand toys. The winter coats he still hadn't been able to buy. "Yes, sir," he'd replied. Now, standing in his living room, phone still warm in his hand, he wished he hadn't. The call replayed in his head. Cold, efficient. "We're terminating your employment, Marcus." No warning. No explanation. No discussion. Just a voice on the other end of the line, telling him he no longer had a job. On Christmas morning, Marcus felt his knees weaken. He lowered himself onto the couch slowly, elbows resting on his thighs, hands clasped together. He stared at the floor, breathing through the weight pressing down on him. Ava took a step closer.
Did you get in trouble?
She asked softly. That was the question that broke him.
No!
He said quickly, lifting his head.
No, sweetheart. Daddy didn't do anything wrong.
The words felt hollow, even as he said them. Because if that were true, why did it feel like he was being punished? He thought back to the warehouse. The cold concrete floors. The humming machines. The empty parking lot when he arrived before sunrise. How the building had felt hollow, stripped of warmth and humanity, just like the holiday itself. Only 3 employees had been there. All of them black. All of them told they were needed. Marcus remembered glancing at the clock every few minutes, thinking about his kids waking up without him. Thinking about Ava trying to be brave. Noah pretending he wasn't disappointed. Then came the mistake. A mislabeled pallet. A number off by 1 digit. Something that would have taken 5 minutes to fix. Instead, his supervisor had raised his voice. Loud enough for everyone to hear. "You can't even get this right?" the man had said, shaking his head. "This is why I don't like letting you people work unsupervised." Marcus had felt the words hit him harder than the accusation. He had kept his head down. Corrected the label. Finished the shift. He had clocked out at noon. Promised overtime. Promised appreciation. Instead, he got the call. Back in the living room, the silence stretched. Noah stood up slowly. "Are you going to work tomorrow?" he asked. Marcus opened his mouth then closed it. "I don't know," he said honestly. The room felt smaller. The tree lights blinked again. And Marcus realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about a job. It was about dignity. About being forced to choose between providing for your children and being present for them. About working on Christmas morning and still being treated like you were disposable. His phone buzzed again in his hand. A notification. A video. From a coworker. Marcus stared at the screen. His stomach dropped. Because the thumbnail showed him. Standing in the warehouse. With his kids in the background. And his boss's voice caught mid-sentence. Marcus didn't know who recorded the video. Or how far it had already traveled. But somewhere outside that living room, Christmas morning was about to change everything. Marcus stared at the notification until the screen dimmed. Then it lit again. Then dimmed again. The phone felt heavier in his hand than it should have, like it was carrying something he wasn't ready to see. Ava had climbed onto the couch beside him, her small shoulder pressed into his arm. Noah stood a few steps away, quiet now, watching his father's face the way children do when they sense something has shifted but don't yet understand what it means. "Daddy," Ava whispered. "What is it?" Marcus forced air into his lungs and tapped the screen. The video opened with a jolt of motion. Someone adjusting their grip, fabric brushing against a microphone. The hollow echo of the warehouse filled the room. For a moment, there was nothing but sound. Then the image steadied. Marcus saw himself. Standing near a stack of pallets, shoulders slightly hunched, hands lifted in that careful, non-threatening way he'd learned over the years. His jacket was zipped tight against the cold, breath faintly visible in the air. He looked smaller than Marcus remembered feeling that morning. But what made his chest tighten wasn't his own face. It was what sat behind him. Through the open loading bay door, the camera had captured the parking lot, and the car parked too close to the building. Inside, wrapped in blankets, were two small figures. His children. Noah's red winter hat. Ava's pink scarf. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, unable to look away. The audio sharpened. Mr. Langston's voice cut through the warehouse, loud, sharp, carrying the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "You want to know why I called you in today?" Langston said. Marcus in the video nodded carefully. "You said it was an emergency, sir." Langston laughed, a short sound without warmth. "That's right. Because some of us actually care about performance." The camera zoomed slightly. Whoever was recording had noticed the same thing Marcus now couldn't stop seeing. "You promised overtime," Marcus said in the video. His voice was careful, measured. "You said if I came in on Christmas, it'd be overtime." Langston waved a hand. "We'll see." Marcus swallowed. "I fixed the label. It was a small error." Langston stepped closer. "You always have excuses," he said. Then, louder, so the sound bounced off the concrete walls. "This is why I don't like letting you people work unsupervised." Marcus felt his stomach twist. In the video, he didn't respond. He stood there, absorbing it, choosing silence because silence had kept him employed before. "Sir," Marcus said quietly, "my kids are out there. It's Christmas." Langston didn't even look. "That's not my problem," he snapped. "You chose to bring them." A small sound carried through the open door, Ava's laugh, unaware, innocent. It made the moment unbearable. Langston straightened. "You know what?" he said. "I'm done." He pointed the clipboard at Marcus like an accusation. "Pack your things. You're fired." Marcus blinked in the video. "Today." "For incompetence," Langston continued. "For carelessness. For being a liability." Marcus took a step back. "You said..." Langston cut him off, voice rising. "Stop whining. Go explain it to your kids. Tell them their daddy can't follow instructions." The camera... And then, just for a second, it captured Noah's face pressed against the car window, eyes wide, confusion turning slowly into fear. Ava wiped at her eyes with her sleeve. Marcus dropped the phone onto the couch. Ava grabbed his arm. "Daddy, that's you?" Noah's voice barely rose above a whisper. "They fired you?" Marcus didn't answer right away. He pulled them both into his arms, holding them tight, his jaw clenched as the Christmas lights blinked behind them like they didn't belong in this moment. The video continued playing, Langston's voice still filling the room, still lecturing, still stripping dignity from the man on screen. Marcus reached out and shut it off. The silence afterward felt louder than the shouting had. He stared straight ahead, heart pounding. That video wasn't just humiliating. It was dangerous. It showed his children, It showed the building. It showed the name stitched onto Langston's jacket. Enough for anyone to recognize where it happened. Marcus picked up the phone again. He didn't need to read the message to know who it was from. Deshawn had been there that morning, standing a few aisles away, frozen in the same disbelief. Deshawn had watched the moment unfold and decided that silence wasn't an option. Marcus read the words once. Then again. Deshawn hadn't asked permission. Hadn't waited. Hadn't hesitated. He had recorded it. Not for attention. Not for revenge. But because some things weren't meant to disappear. Marcus's pulse quickened. He asked where it had gone. The answer came fast, online and everywhere. Marcus clicked the link. The video filled the screen again. This time cropped, stabilized, subtitled. Bold text made the words impossible to ignore. The view count climbed faster than his mind could process. Comments poured in. People weren't laughing. They were angry. Strangers were calling it cruel, dehumanizing, unforgivable. Some demanded the company's name. Others demanded consequences. Many asked how a man could be fired on Christmas morning in front of his children. Marcus felt dizzy. Then he saw it. Pinned near the top. Official verified. The company's name unmistakable. They acknowledged the video. They condemned the behavior. They promised an investigation. Marcus leaned back slowly, phone pressed against his chest. Corporate had seen it. Noah tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, are people mad at you?" Marcus shook his head gently. "They're mad at what happened." Ava's lip trembled. "Are we still having Christmas?" Marcus forced a breath and smiled, even as his chest ached. "We are," he said. "It might just look different." The doorbell rang. Marcus stiffened. The sound cut through the house, sharp and final. He stood slowly, heart racing, and walked toward the door. Through the glass, he saw two men on the porch. Dark jackets. Professional posture. One held a folder. The other held a badge. Marcus opened the door halfway. "Yes?" he asked. "Marcus Hill," one of them said. "Yes." The man raised the badge slightly. "We're from corporate compliance," he said. His eyes flicked past Marcus into the living room, at the Christmas tree, at the children watching silently. "We need to ask you some questions about what happened today." Marcus swallowed. "Now?" he asked. The man nodded. "Yes," he said. "Now." Marcus didn't know if this visit meant accountability or damage control. But he knew one thing. Corporate had come to his door on Christmas Day. And whatever happened next would decide whether this story ended in justice or silence. Marcus didn't step aside right away. He stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, his body instinctively shielding the living room behind him. The cold air from outside slipped into the house, brushing against the warmth of the Christmas lights and the faint smell of cinnamon from the night before. The two men waited patiently. "Just a procedure." "Yes," Marcus said finally, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "That's me." "I'm Daniel Reeves," the taller man said, lowering his badge. "This is my colleague, Susan Miller. We're with corporate compliance." Susan gave a small nod, professional and unreadable. "We'd like to ask you a few questions about the incident at the warehouse this morning," Daniel continued. "If now is a bad time." Marcus glanced over his shoulder. Ava and Noah stood near the tree, their faces pale and tight, their earlier excitement replaced by something heavy and unfamiliar. Ava hugged her stuffed bear to her chest. Noah's jaw was clenched, his small hands curled into fists. Marcus looked back at the two strangers. "Come in," he said quietly. They stepped inside, their shoes leaving faint traces of dampness on the floor. Susan glanced around once, at the unopened present under the tree, at the half-packed boxes near the wall, at the children who hadn't said a word since the door opened. "This won't take long," she said gently. Marcus gestured toward the dining table. "We can talk there." As they sat, Daniel opened the folder in his hands, revealing printed screenshots of the video. Marcus's stomach twisted when he saw the still images, his own face frozen mid-expression, Langston's mouth open mid-sentence, the blurred outline of his children visible in the background. Daniel didn't rush. "Mr. Hill," he began, "we've reviewed the footage multiple times. I want to start by saying this. What's depicted there is serious. Marcus nodded. It felt serious. Susan leaned forward slightly. We need to establish a timeline. Can you walk us through how you came to be at the warehouse this morning? Marcus took a breath. He spoke slowly, carefully, choosing honesty over strategy. Last night, he said, my supervisor called me. He said there was an emergency shift. He said it was overtime. Daniel scribbled a note. I told him it was Christmas, Marcus continued. He said if I wanted the hours, I needed to come in. Susan looked up. Were other employees called? Yes, Marcus said. 3 of us. Were all 3 of you asked to work overtime on Christmas morning? Marcus hesitated. As far as I know, yes. Daniel looked up. And the other employees, were they also black? The question landed softly, but it landed. Marcus met his eyes. Yes. Daniel didn't react. He simply wrote something down. Why were your children present? Susan asked gently. Marcus swallowed. My sister was supposed to watch them. Her car broke down early this morning. I didn't have another option. Did you inform your supervisor they were with you? Daniel asked. Yes, Marcus replied. I told him when I arrived. And what was his response? Marcus exhaled slowly. He told me to handle my personal problems on my own time. Susan's jaw tightened slightly. Daniel turned another page in the folder. Let's talk about the error that allegedly led to your termination, he said. Can you explain what happened? It was a mislabeled pallet, Marcus said. 1 digit off. I fixed it immediately. Was there any loss to the company? Daniel asked. No, Marcus replied. None. Was this the first time you'd made such an error? Susan asked. Marcus shook his head. I've never been written up. I've never been disciplined. Daniel paused his pen. Mr. Hill, he said, according to internal records, your supervisor documented this as a pattern of carelessness. Marcus's heart dropped. That's not true, he said. I've never. Susan raised a hand gently. We're aware there may be discrepancies. She slid a page across the table. Marcus looked down. It was a screenshot of his performance reviews. All positive. All consistent. No mention of patterns. No warnings. No corrective action. Daniel cleared his throat. There's another issue. Marcus looked up. The overtime authorization, Daniel said. There's no record of it. Marcus's mouth went dry. What do you mean? He asked. There's no approval logged for Christmas overtime, Susan said. Which means, officially, you were scheduled to work a standard shift. That's impossible, Marcus said. He told me. Daniel nodded. We believe you. Marcus froze. Susan continued. In fact, that's why we're here. She tapped the folder. We pulled the system logs. Daniel looked at Marcus, his expression serious now. Someone accessed the scheduling system early this morning, he said. Someone with supervisor credentials. Marcus felt the room tilt. And shortly after, Susan added, your record was modified. Marcus stared at them. Modified how? Daniel inhaled slowly. The overtime request was never submitted, he said. And a disciplinary note was added retroactively. Marcus's hands curled into fists. He changed it, Marcus whispered. Susan nodded once. That appears to be the case. Silence filled the room. Ava shifted closer to Marcus, pressing against his side. Daddy, she whispered. Are you in trouble? Marcus turned to her and shook his head firmly. No, baby. I'm not. Daniel closed the folder. Mr. Hill, he said, I want to be very clear. Retaliation, falsification of records, and discriminatory remarks are all violations of company policy. Susan looked at the children again, her voice softening. And firing an employee in front of their children, she added, raises additional concerns. Marcus felt something unfamiliar rise in his chest. Not relief but caution. What happens now? He asked. Daniel exchanged a look with Susan. We escalate, he said. Your supervisor has been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation. Marcus blinked. What? The video triggered an automatic audit, Susan explained. Once it crossed a certain threshold of public exposure, compliance procedures kicked in. Marcus thought of the millions of views. The comments. The outrage. So, this only happened because people saw it? He asked quietly. Daniel didn't deny it. Susan spoke instead. Visibility accelerates accountability. Marcus sat back, processed. Will I get my job back? He asked. Daniel hesitated. That depends, he said, on what the investigation confirms. Marcus nodded slowly. He had learned enough about systems to know that depends was not a promise. Daniel stood. We'll be in touch. Susan added, and Mr. Hill, thank you for your cooperation. As they walked toward the door, Marcus followed. Just before Daniel stepped outside, he turned back. There's one more thing, he said. Marcus braced himself. The video, Daniel said. It didn't just reach us. Marcus felt his stomach sink. Who else? He asked. Daniel's expression tightened. Regional leadership, he said. And external auditors. Marcus's breath caught. Susan added quietly, this is bigger than one supervisor now. The door closed behind them. Marcus leaned against it, heart racing. Noah broke the silence. Daddy, he said softly, does that mean you won? Marcus looked down at his son. I don't know, he said honestly. That night, long after the kids had fallen asleep, Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages, calls, notifications. He didn't answer most of them. Then one email came through. Official, formal. Subject line short and precise. Mandatory meeting, 9 a.m. Marcus stared at it. Below the subject line was a list of attendees. Corporate compliance, regional management, human resources, and one name that made his pulse spike. Langston Ho. Marcus closed his eyes. The man who humiliated him. The man who fired him. The man who altered the records. They would all be in the same room. Marcus looked toward the living room, where the Christmas trees still stood, lights dimmed now, gifts untouched. Tomorrow he would have to face the system that had failed him. And for the first time, the system would be forced to face him back. Marcus didn't know whether that meeting would restore his job or quietly erase him. But one thing was certain. The next morning, the truth would be spoken in a room that could no longer look away. The meeting room was too bright for a December morning. Marcus noticed it immediately, the way the fluorescent lights reflected off the polished table, the way everything looked sterile and controlled, as if emotion itself wasn't allowed to enter the space. He sat at one end of the long table, hands folded neatly in front of him, spine straight, breathing slow. Across from him sat people who had never met his children. They wore tailored jackets, neutral expressions, corporate smiles that knew how to soften without meaning it. And then there was Langston. He sat 2 seats down, posture rigid, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the tabletop as if it were the only thing anchoring him in the room. The confidence Marcus had seen in the warehouse was gone, replaced by something thinner, defensive. The meeting began without ceremony. A woman from Human Resources spoke first, reading from a prepared statement. Words like investigation, protocol, standards of conduct floated through the room. Marcus listened carefully, saying nothing. He had learned by now that silence could be powerful, but only when truth was already present. Daniel Reeves cleared his throat. We've completed a preliminary audit, he said calmly, including system logs, scheduling records, and performance documentation. Langston shifted in his chair. Daniel continued. The audit shows that the Christmas overtime request was never submitted, despite being verbally promised. Langston's lawyer leaned forward. Verbal misunderstandings. Daniel raised a hand. We're not finished. The room stilled. Supervisor access logs show that employee records were altered after the incident, Daniel said. Specifically, a disciplinary note was added retroactively. Langston looked up sharply. That's not. Mr. Langston, the HR representative said firmly, you'll have an opportunity to respond. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Hill, she said, we want to acknowledge that your termination did not follow company policy. Marcus nodded once. And, she added. The language used during the incident violates our code of conduct. No one said the word racist. They didn't need to. Daniel leaned back slightly. Based on our findings, the termination is being reversed. The words settled slowly, like snow. You will be reinstated immediately, HR continued, with full back pay, including the overtime originally promised. Marcus felt a tightening in his chest, not relief exactly, but something steadier. Recognition. We are also offering you a formal apology, she said, and access to legal counsel should you choose to pursue further action. Marcus glanced down at his hands. Then he looked up. Thank you, he said. Langston stood abruptly. This is ridiculous, he snapped. I was enforcing standards. Daniel's voice cut through the room. You were falsifying records. Silence followed. HR turned to Langston. Mr. Langston, effective immediately, you are being terminated. The words landed without drama. No raised voices. No humiliation. No spectacle. Just consequence. Langston's face was drained of color. This isn't over, he muttered, gathering his things. Marcus watched him leave, not with triumph, but with a quiet understanding. Power didn't always fall loudly. Sometimes it simply exited the room. The meeting ended shortly after. Marcus stepped outside into the cold air, his breath fogging as he pulled his coat tighter. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from his sister. Kids are asking if you're coming home. Marcus smiled. I am, he said aloud, even before typing the reply. That afternoon, he returned home with boxes of takeout instead of wrapped gifts. Ava and Noah ran to the door, colliding with his legs, clinging to him like they were afraid he might disappear again. Daddy, Ava asked softly, did you fix it? Marcus knelt down, pulling them close. I didn't fix it, he said. But the truth did. They ate together at the table, laughed more than Marcus expected, opened the last present, a board game they played badly and joyfully until the sky darkened outside. Later that night, after the kids had fallen asleep, Marcus sat alone in the living room. The tree lights blinked softly. He thought about the warehouse, the video, the strangers who had spoken up when he couldn't. He thought about how easily this could have ended differently. How many people never get a camera, never get witnesses, never get a system that listens. This wasn't just his story. It was a pattern of workers punished for existing, of dignity traded for survival, of silence expected and rewarded. Marcus understood now that justice didn't arrive on its own. It arrived when people refused to look away, when coworkers pressed record, when strangers amplified truth, when systems were forced, by visibility, to respond. The next morning, Marcus returned to work. Not because the job was perfect, but because walking back through those doors, on his terms, meant something. It meant his children would grow up knowing that being treated unfairly wasn't something you simply endured. It meant Christmas would be remembered not just for what was taken, but for what was reclaimed. Some injustices happen quietly. Others happen in plain sight. But all of them rely on the same thing to survive: silence. This story isn't about one man, one boss, or one company. It's about what happens when ordinary people decide that dignity matters more than convenience, and what becomes possible when we choose not to look away. If this story moved you, kindly hit the like button so more people can see it. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about justice, resilience, and truth. And we want to hear from you. Should employers be allowed to force workers to choose between family and survival? Have you ever witnessed workplace injustice and felt powerless to stop it? Do you think public accountability is the only way systems change? Your voice matters. Someone reading your comment might need it more than you know. Justice doesn't always come wrapped in celebration. Sometimes, it comes quietly after the lights are turned off.